This episode is brought to you in part by Museum of the Bible and its new worship experience, All Creation Sings, made in partnership with Creator. Step into an immersive room with vibrant visuals, soundscapes of praise, and interactive displays illuminating the story of worship. Get tickets at museumofthebible.org/ACS.
Welcome to the Grace Enough podcast. I am your host, Amber Cullum. This week, I sit down with possibly the most fun, loving, and grace-filled human on Instagram, the chief of the Insta Familia, Carlos Whittaker. If you aren't following Carlos on Instagram, you are truly missing out. Seriously, on any given day, you might witness stories ranging from an owl rescue to donating $40,000 to a stranger to a monologue about how to be a good human. Today, we touch on all of those things with a focus on Carlos's most recent book, How to Human. It's a delightful conversation. And speaking of books, you know, I interview a lot of authors on the show. What I love about interviewing authors is they have spent months, sometimes years, delving into the topic or life experience they've written about. Along the way, there have been books that have influenced me in ways I didn't anticipate. So I have curated a list of 8 books that were influential in ways that surprised me as a free resource for you. You can find the list at graceenoughpodcast.com/books. Good afternoon, Carlos, and welcome to the Grace Enough podcast.
Thank you, Amber. I'm so glad to be here.
Yes, it is obviously very exciting for me as myself and so many of my friends follow along on your fun Instagram journeys. Precious Moments maybe being my favorite.
Oh, yes. That is going to go down in the Instagram Hall of Fame.
I would love to read some of the messages that you got, because even my husband got on board for that one, and he is not a social media guy, right? He was like, that is so creepy.
That is so weird. You know, it's you know, it's funny because I for those listeners that don't know what we're talking about,
that's right.
I was in somewhere in Missouri. I don't know where I was, but there was a Precious Moments museum there. It's like the maker of Precious Moments, the inventor, is from there, and so he had actually created like a miniature version of the Sistine Chapel, but with Precious Moments angels. So I'd heard about it, and I was like, I gotta go, and it was pretty creepy, you know, like it was these Precious Moments. Some of them didn't have eyeballs, and like you're just kind of walking through, and you know the places probably was like banging in the 90s,
right?
And you know 2020 it was not banging. And so there were weeds growing to places, and I just was like, wow, like I'm glad I got to take my Instagram followers along. It was fun.
Oh my goodness, it was hilarious. I'm like, I need to get tips from you on putting the music on and everything.
Oh yeah,
it was just like perfect. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No.
We're here to talk about your newest book, which is really what you live out, and that's How to Human. But before we really dig into that, let's start back when you were a child and how you really began walking with Christ. I mean, you're a preacher's kid. Yeah. Your parents are still living. It's been really nice to watch you journey with them as your dad's battling dementia, yet he is a role model for you. So tell us a little bit about how they shaped your faith and about your journey.
Yeah, you know, my parents, they're both first generation immigrants into this country and came here to chase their dreams. And this country's given a lot to them. And knowing where my dad came from in Colon, Panama, he's from the slums of Colon, lived in a tiny ghetto, 1-bedroom apartment with 7 siblings, and his mom and dad, and his dad, my grandpa, helped build the Panama Canal. And, you know, there's a rich history of like, of hard work. All of my father's siblings immigrated to America in the 60s, and they all ended up being doctors and lawyers and pastors. And, you know, they just, you know, he's just a king of a man, you know, I just love him. So, and also him coming to America in 1960 as a black man that didn't speak English. It's kind of like 2 strikes, right? Like when in 1960 it was 2 strikes. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, just to know what he journeyed through to get to where he's at. And more than anything, I just tell you, both my parents just love me. They loved me and my brother. I had a fantastic childhood. I know a lot of people didn't have that, but I don't apologize for having it. Like I remember I'd wake up to go to school at 6:30 to get on the bus, and my dad would be on his knees praying for me in his office. And so I just was surrounded by God-fearing, Jesus-loving parents. And yeah, grew up, son of a pastor, and he was the pastor of Primera Iglesia Bautista de Pico Rivera, first bilingual Baptist church in East LA.
I'm like, wait a minute, that's a lot more words than the typical evangelical church.
Primera Iglesia Bautista, first bilingual Baptist church in Pico Rivera, East LA. And
Wow.
kind of grew up there, in the church, and it was a great childhood. He set me up, I feel like, with some really good foundation beneath my feet, even though like I ended up going all kinds of off the path. I always knew what the path felt like under my feet. So I always knew that there was something. I feel like a lot of people don't even know that there is foundation beneath their feet. And so, yeah, both my parents kind of set me up in that, and now, I find myself, in this season of taking care of my parents, and of, my dad battling dementia, my mom being his primary caretaker, me living 4 hours away, but trying to, help as much as I can. And yeah, so there's some beautifully tragic moments in this walk that I'm walking with my dad, but also getting to walk knowing just how near he is to the Lord, and knowing that, he's going to walk through the, I don't know if they're actually pearly white gates, but he's going to walk through something.
That's right. It sounds good when you say it.
Yeah, it sounds good when you say it. And so, just to know that there's more to all this life that we're living than the pain and the trauma that we're going through right now. There actually is a true promise that John 10:10 makes pretty clear. And so, yeah, it's just been good. Like I'm grateful for my parents' influence in my life and where I'm at today.
Well, we'll shift a little bit into the fact that people who may be listening who don't know who you are, I mean, it is incredible that you've raised $2 million on Venmo alone. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like for other people in need, which
just for strangers,
Yes.
I'm walking along, and if I feel prompted by the Spirit, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I know that because my followers, I call them the Insta Familia on Instagram. It's more than just like an Instagram profile. Like it's actually a thing. It's a thing. Like it's like
it is a thing.
people would be proud to be a part of it. And what's crazy is like, it's so weird to know that like anyone I walk by, I literally can be like, well, we can change their life right now. We can change their life right now. And I try to walk so in tune with the Spirit. And we don't do this every month. We probably do it every 3 or 4 months, where I find a need. But when I do, and to watch the Insta Familia come together and just dump everything in their Venmo into a pot, and then we get to bless somebody and change their life, has been awesome.
Well, how did it begin? Because I'm trying to think back, like if I remember, if I was even around when it began. I don't recall.
So in 2020, when I began to speak just to things that are a little bit more difficult in the context of culture, and I'm trying to do it in a grace-filled way, and my platform, after I lost a lot of people, started to grow at a pretty rapid pace. So I would say that the majority of my following came in 2020, but not until 2021
did I was around.
Yeah, so you were around, and so you may remember this. So it was a Sunday afternoon, and I was, whatever, talking to my phone like I do every day. And an Instagram follower of mine sent a profile of another follower of mine, said, "Hey, Carlos, do you know this lady? She follows you. She's having like 30 seizures a day." And yeah. And I was like, huh. And they said she's trying to raise money for a seizure alert dog, so that she can, be alerted of her seizures. So I clicked on her GoFundMe, and I think she'd raised like $8,000 in about a month. And she was trying to get to $32,000. And I remember specifically thinking, I think at the time I may have had like 60,000 followers or something. And I remember thinking, well, I wonder if like we could at least raise like 1,000. Like, what if we could raise $1,000? That would be amazing. And then I was like, well, I don't know. What if I put a call out? Because I found out this was an important thing to do. I gave a number, And I think that's so important when we're asking for things and doing things like this. I said, what if we actually raised as much as she has raised? So $8,000, we get her to half of that. Let's try to take 24 hours to do that. Then she only has $16,000 more to raise. So I posted the story, and I'm walking in my front yard. I posted the story. 7 minutes later, we had bought her seizure alert dog. Like
So
7 minutes
incredible.
later, it was like, and I was like, whoa,
Yeah.
like what is happening? Like, wait a second. And that was when I knew, kind of when the Lord kind of nudged me and said, hey, you've got something here. There's something here. These people are salivating to give. It's like there's a juicy steak in front of them. That's how bad they want to give. And so I just kind of started going, and I'm like, well, let's try it again. Let's try it again. And next thing you know, we have changed and helped a lot of people. We freed a lot of people from a lot of things. And I couldn't be happier to be leading an army of givers.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is for me that so often I would receive a message like that has not happened to me a lot. But the few times it has, it's so easy to be like, oh, that's not real.
Absolutely.
And I think that is what happens. I don't think I'm alone in that. That's why I don't have a problem sharing that. And so what do you think it is in you that are like, no, I'm going to investigate this?
Yeah, well, I know that it's Holy Spirit, because now it's not a stretch to say that 20% of the messages I get a day are, can you help? Can you help? Can you help? Can you help? And so, I can't obviously I can't help everybody. Right. And so, it is a very specific ask. Like, Lord, is this one? Or it's just such a strong heart pull, such a strong heart connection. Really, like Tony, the piano man in the airport. Like, I mean, we literally became like best friends. Like, it wasn't just that we raised money for him. Like, Tony became like another dad to me. And so these people that we raise money for, like, I don't just want to raise money and to walk away. Like, I'm texting with Brandon, who we raised money for on the Atlanta airport a couple of months ago, just today, trying to get him to a dentist. Like, I'm just, it becomes a relationship things for me. So, I'm cognitive of, I don't just want this to be like inspiration, for people. Right. I want them to understand that this is like, we're really truly investing in these people.
Yeah. Well, and something that I've always been curious about is, how does your family get on board with it? Because you are so close with your family, which we're going to talk about a little bit at the end. My friend Kara's like, what I really want to know is he has such an awesome relationship with his kids. Yeah. And I want to hear about that, but we're going to talk about that. But how do they get on board with all of this giving? And are they like, oh my gosh, Dad's crazy?
Yeah. Yes to all of it. Yeah. Yes to oh my gosh, Dad's crazy. Yes to, I think I've gotten to a pretty good cadence around my family when it comes to just filming and sharing and talking and looking at my phone and all that stuff. I think probably for about 3 years, it's been really healthy. Before that, it wasn't. But, as my kids have gotten older, and I've been able to ask them more specifically, like, hey, do you like being on my stories all the time? And a couple of them are like, nope. And I'm like, oh, then I should probably not have you on there. But just to invite them in, every single time. And they always know. It's funny because like my daughters, as much as they roll their eyes at me, like if I post a story, if I'm in Dallas, like, and you can see like who's seen your stories, they're always, I don't know if they maybe have push notifications to their phone whenever their dad posts a story.
They look first.
They look first. They're always the first ones. And I'm like, okay, they're watching. And then but they're blown away every time. They're like, Dad, like, how much money is it now? And I'm like, 180,000. And they're like, what? And then I show them my Venmo, and they're just losing their minds. And so, but what I think it's done, it's built a culture of giving in them. And so, to watch them do it as well, it's been fun.
That's cool. I love that you say that though about your kids watching, because I think my kids don't even care about podcasting. And then when I talk about giving it up, they're like, we think it's really cool that you podcast. Don't give it up. And you're like, oh,
that's awesome.
I didn't even think you even noticed.
Right. Right.
Because they're still pretty little, but.
This episode is brought to you in part by Beyond Ordinary Women Ministries, which prepares Christian women for leadership. At BOW, we believe that every woman is a leader because she influences someone. So, whom do you influence? Do you mentor a woman? Serve in the workplace? Or do you lead a small group, teach the Bible, or even lead an entire ministry? No matter who or how many you influence, our free online resources will help equip you. Our videos, podcast episodes, and articles from experienced women leaders will encourage you and perfect your leadership skills. They offer wisdom for dealing with ministry pitfalls, current biblical issues, health for your own soul, and insights for shepherding others well. In addition, Bow offers Bible studies designed to connect women of multiple generations. They provide a challenge to both women new to the Bible and those wanting to dig deeper. Be our guest and browse all of our free resources and low-cost Bible studies at beyondordinarywomen.org.
Well, so of all the people that you've helped, I mean, some I know have gone unseen. Is
Sure.
there that one story, or just one that really resonated with you, that you feel like the Lord just kind of opened your eyes to something maybe new that you could share with us, and why it was so important to you?
Yeah, I mean, I do have relationships with everybody that we've raised money for. Now, I don't, I tell my Insta Familia all the time, like, I'm not like keeping up with them like financially. Like, listen,
Yeah.
if we raise like $180,000 for somebody and they're like, I'm going to buy a new house, and they end up like taking a vacation to Europe and living in some
Yep.
castles, then that's what they're going to do. Like, it's not
You don't need to control it.
yeah, we're not we're just giving. And so, but this last one was actually really eye-opening for me. When I was in the Atlanta airport in September, maybe October, I'd run across 3 food court workers. Brandon, who I was just saying was texting me, and they were just, I was just watching them like literally perspiring, cleaning the tables because it was so busy. And we raised money for them. And they each ended up with about $40,000. And I think what was eye-opening for me and what the Lord really put on my heart was, Carlos, like when I gave them the money, they didn't have a way to get it. And I was like, well, don't you have Venmo? And they're like, what's Venmo? And I was like,
Wow.
well, wait a second. You could put it on your phone. And then they showed me their phone, and they don't even have like a smartphone. They just have like a flip phone. And I'm like, well, then how can I get this? And I was like, well, maybe I can wire it to your bank account, and they're like, oh, I don't have a bank account. Like I go to a check cashing place. And so suddenly what it showed me was that, like the system isn't even set up for these people to even receive the blessing that they have been given. And I mean, my eyes were open to just, I was asking them how much they made, and like, they don't make enough to, they work 40 hours a week at the airport in this food court, some of them 50, 60 hours, and still don't make enough money to live in the projects. Like,
Wow.
and so just the living wage piece of things, the social side of the justice piece that I'm very passionate about. This last time I was like, okay, there needs to be another arm of what I do that really sets up a support system for some of these people that may not even have the resources to get the money that I'm trying to get them.
Wow. I mean, that is hard to believe, right?
It's hard. It was mind blowing. I was like, well, how do you get paid? Oh, I just take the check that Miss Betty gives me, and I walk down the street from the airport and I cash it. And then I take the cash and I pay my rent and I buy my groceries. And I'm like, oh my God, like,
yeah. And we're not talking people, like, if you all, whoever's listening, if you don't know what we're talking about, most of this stuff is in highlights on Carlos's Instagram. So just go and start watching highlights. But it's not like all 3 of these people are 70 years old and above.
Right.
Like, we're not talking about this is lack of resources, smartphone, quote unquote, because of their age.
Right. No, this is because of the circumstances that they have been given in life. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is more than just giving them money. This is finding them a budgeting coach in Atlanta. This is finding them a dentist that's going to help them fix their teeth that they've never even been to the dentist. So they don't have, this is just a full service shop here, And so, I'm actually working on building a nonprofit where I can do a little bit more of that stuff.
Yes. Got to have some help. Can't do it all alone.
No.
That's right. Well, the subtitle of your new book is 3 Ways to Share Life Beyond What Distracts, Divides, and Disconnects. What are those 3 ways, and how do they help us against those things that divide, distract, and disconnect?
Yeah, absolutely. The 3 things are to be human, to see humans, and to free humans. And I just think that if we're spending the majority of our time finding out who we truly were created to be, what our identity is really rooted in, who we really are, then we can finally be who we were supposed to be. And once we know that, then we can do what the Insta Familia does, right? Then we can see people. And I try to help people see people that don't look like them, don't
Yeah.
think like them, don't pray like them, don't love like them, don't do anything vote like them. Like we've got to truly learn to see people that are not like us. And it's a human condition to want to be around people that are like this, that make us feel comfortable. And so that's why this is actually work. It's not a bumper sticker, BC and free. Oh, that sounds cute. No,
Right.
it's like impossible without the work of the Holy Spirit,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just the seeing people where they are, and that's actually hard. Again, like to turn and to see somebody that you may feel like is dehumanizing, that you may feel like is an enemy or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
those are the ones that we're called. Those are actually children of God as well that we're called to. And then the kicker, especially if you're a Christian, is to free them. Now, obviously, the goal is for people to find freedom in Christ and freedom in their lives. And the way I find that is through Christ, but it doesn't stop there. Like we can free people through all sorts of physical ways,
Yeah.
natural ways, and, put your money where your mouth is and actually step out there and free somebody. So those are the 3 steps that I feel like will get us past division, right? We've been in just the most divided few years. I mean, how many relationships have ended over politics or over, any of the hot topic issues that have been happening? And why my heart breaks is that none of these relationships that were broken over politics started because of politics. So why in the world, if they weren't born there, why would they die there? And, just trying to help people. I feel like the book, it really helps people get some language and some tools to reconcile some of those relationships, not to let that happen to some relationships, but also, again, to see people that aren't like them.
Yeah, well, and something I love that you point out in the book, and it's interesting because I had read this portion and then had something happen today in a study that I was a part of where they were talking about love and how, you really just can't love people without the Holy Spirit and Christ. And I was like, no, there's a lot of people who love people really well. And
Oh,
you had
yeah.
written that too.
Yeah.
And so what is that? And I feel like that's just such horrible theology because I'm like, no, we witness good people love people all the time. Now, I
Yes.
understand that Christian love is different, but it's
Yeah.
only because of the grace of God.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're incapable of loving. What do you say is the difference there? Like when you're talking about as a Christian, we should love people
Mm,
well. What is
mm.
that difference between the Christian doing that well and just people who
Yeah.
love?
Yeah. Well, so here's the deal. You're right. There are some of the loveliest people I know aren't Christians. That
Amen.
they're teaching me. They're teaching me how to Christian now. They're teaching me how to be a Christian, and they're not even Christians. They're filled with
Yes.
the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Like I see that in so many non-Christians, right? And
Yeah.
but here's the difference. If a non-Christian loves that way, it's simply because they were created in the image of God. Every single
Yep.
person has God's DNA enveloped inside of them. So I feel like it is a reaction, a human reaction inside of all of us to love. The difference is if you're a Christian, you now represent something more than just loving. You
That's
now
right.
represent something more than just being a good neighbor. Like you are representing eternity. You are representing Jesus. You're representing a large plethora of people, which is why it is so painful for me to see people that claim Christ being the most rage-filled, finger-pointing, salivating, angry people on social media. And I'm like, can you please tell me who you're convincing to fall in
Seriously.
love with the ways of the Lord by doing that? And I just can't say that enough, that that's not what we're called for. And that's why there's ultimately a bigger responsibility on us, because we're placing our money on something else besides ourselves. Like
That's right.
we're putting our bets, we're going all in and placing it on the life and the personhood and honestly the divinity of Jesus. So if that's the case, we are now representing more than just us. So that's why I feel like there's a difference.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and so let's say you're sitting across the table from those people who are shouting on
Oh,
social media and you're like, oh my gosh, this is my brother and my sister in Christ. And right now, I won't put words in your mouth. I'll speak for myself. I want to rip their head off.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, And listen, I've been guilty as the next person at certain points in my
Sure.
life. So this is not finger pointing. This is me
Yeah.
speaking to my former self. What are some ways that you kind of break that tension? Because something that I know that you do well is you break that tension. You see them as
Yeah.
human. I have witnessed you do it. Got any
Um,
tips for us?
yeah, I feel like even the hardest ones for me are the ones that I know, right? Like
Mhm.
not even like the Christians that I don't know that are yelling, but like the
No,
ones that
your
I know,
friends.
my friends. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, and for me, like has to be it has to be over a table. Like it can't be with my thumbs. If I try to course correct their humanity with my thumbs, I'm in a heap of trouble. And it's going to have to be over a meal. It's going to have to be over just where they can see my eyes and feel my breath.
Mm.
Like this whole seeing people, it has to be within proximity of the person. Where, like, how in the world, we hear all the time, be the hands and feet of Jesus. You can't be the hands and feet of Jesus from a mile away. What a lot of people want to do with this current situation is they want to, because it's so triggering to get close to those kind of people, they want to just view them from a distance, right? And well, Carlos,
Mm.
I can see them, like they're like, I see him, like he's wearing a red shirt, he's blue jeans, he's wearing these, I can actually see his hair a little bit. And what they want to do is like, oh, you want me to get closer? So instead of walking up closer, they grab some spiritual binoculars and they put them up to their eyes. And now they're like, yep, I see closer. But here's the problem with binoculars. Think about this for a second. If you've ever used binoculars, and if you haven't, you should go try sometime. And if I see like a bird in a tree 3 houses down from my house right now, and I see it right now, but I want to see it closer. If I put binoculars on and I look, I suddenly have lost it. It takes me a hot second, maybe a minute, to find exactly what I'm trying to look for. And I'm like, oh, guess what? You're right. Now you can see it a lot clearer. But guess what? In a second, it's going to move. And then I got to start all over again. I got to find it again. We're not talking about binocular humaning here.
Mm.
Like that is a horrible way to see people up close. You got to get up close, walk up to them. And when you're up to them, your empathy, I think, is going to start to build, and maybe you'll learn something that you didn't know, but it's got to happen within arm's distance of somebody.
Yeah. I mean, you've gotten so comfortable. I feel like doing it with strangers
Yeah.
and everything. And I think even about when I started podcasting, and you can feel so uncomfortable at first.
Yep.
But once you start doing it, it does become easier and easier and easier. And I think it's the same with having difficult conversations with people,
Yeah.
stopping to talk to the stranger that you're maybe a little bit terrified of because they
Yep.
push you out of your comfort zone. It's just like anything, practice really does lend itself to just a greater ease of conversation, of being, whatever that is. So,
Yeah. No, it does.
um,
Practice is like, the more you do it, the more you walk up to people that, again, don't look like you or anything like you, the easier it's going to get to do it. And then honestly, the more you're going to enjoy it.
oh, yeah. The
Yeah.
enjoying part
Yeah.
is what when it's people you're like, I used to enjoy you, and now I'm really
Right.
struggling to enjoy you.
Right.
But
Right.
anyways, well, recently you posted something in your stories that actually really resonated with people, and you've kind of almost turned it into a little 2023 motto. And so I'm going to say the phrases.
Okay.
I want you to just expound a little bit on, what they mean to you.
Okay. Great. I feel like this is a little pop quiz on my own brain. This is
It
good.
is. I love doing this. Being curious up close over judging from a distance.
Yeah, I mean, there it is. Like that's what I was just talking about, the proximity piece. And also the word curious is very
Mhm.
important in that part, because when people want to build empathy, if they feel like that's what they want to build, the number one way to build empathy is through curiosity. And if you're not very curious, you're probably not very empathetic. But the more curious you are about somebody's story, the more you're going to be empathetic. And empathetic, again, the definition is not feeling bad for someone, but
Mhm.
feeling bad with someone. And that's what curiosity brings forth, And so, as opposed to judging from a distance, right? That's the binoculars. That's the like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm looking. Oh, nope. Can you believe what they said? Can you believe what they
Yeah.
posted? Like, get up close.
Yeah. That's a word for all of us.
Yeah.
Walking with people over standing on issues.
That definitely has become a line that I'm I use a lot that I initially heard from my pastor friend, Mike Ashcroft, many, many years ago when he's just kind of trying to help me walk through some of these difficult things I'm going through. And I think I may have asked him like, so where do you stand on this issue? And I think he just was like, oh, I don't, what a horrible thing to do, to stand on an issue. I walk with people. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I've
Wow.
never thought of it like that. And it changed everything. It changed how I handled these difficult relationships. It changed when people try to get my opinion. People all the times do, like on a hot topic, like whatever the hot topic of the day is. Well, Carlos, what do you think? Where do you stand on this? I always say, I don't stand anywhere. I walk with the hot topic. I walk with the issue. I walk with the person. And so, yeah, just more of that, like more of like, of course, there's nothing perfect, no perfect statement under the sun.
Right.
That like this is not easy to do. And there are issues that I stand firm on, but the difference is I will walk with a person on the opposite side of that issue so that I can truly be curious and empathetic with them. I just think the more walking with people as opposed to standing on issues, the more healing is going to happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a good perspective because it doesn't mean you don't have an opinion or a belief.
No.
It just means you're not going to die there.
Exactly. And it just means that I'm not turning my back on
Humanity.
my back on my like morals and what I think is right, but I'm turning my heart and my face and my eyes towards somebody that actually is like, oh my gosh, this person that doesn't agree with me actually sees me. Ooh, like that will do some work and some damage.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, living that way actually is what's going to facilitate a heart change.
Yeah. No, it is that. Can you imagine like the person who's going to be more willing to change their heart? Somebody that's getting yelled at, pointed at, and told that they're the enemy and being called names by somebody that agrees with you, or by you that looks at them and said, oh, so what you're saying is this. I could see how I could see how you could believe that. Like, I mean, who's going to change their mind first, right? It's going to be the second. It's going to be the person that feels loved over the person that feels shamed.
Yeah. And that's where that curiosity comes in, right?
Yes.
You ask questions about where people stand. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, being more of a human and less of an opinion.
Yeah.
Kind of goes with what we're saying. But...
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, that's just it. Like I can name off 5 very popular Instagram accounts right now, and I know way more about their opinions on issues than their humanity. I know what they believe about an issue. I know their opinions, but I don't know anything about their heart. And
wow.
I just think in 2023, I want to be more of a human and less of an opinion. And I think I think we're just going to be better off for it.
Wow. Well, and I mean, you're a great example of that because I think sometimes now for people who are on social media, trying to, you have the platform, all these things, it can be easy for people to say like, oh, you got to do all this stuff to make this happen. But you've showed that just loving people and also being funny.
Yeah, sure.
That helps. That also works. Like people are willing to give. Like you said, they're actually dying to trust someone to just give without expectation.
Well, they are. And I feel like the reason why I have, and I haven't done it recently, maybe a couple months ago, I polled my Instagram. And I'm still more proud of this than I am of anything else. It's literally almost 50% split left and right, politically speaking, of people that follow me. And I'm like, where can you find that anywhere? Like where? And it's because the people that disagree with me politically still feel like I see them. And not only I see them, but I hear them and I'm empathetic with them and I want to learn from them. And so, how about some more of that, and so that's what I'm proud of with the Insta Familia is, yes, there's definitely more people that lean the direction I lean, but man, there is a plethora of people that come knowing they disagree with me on a lot of things, but knowing that they want to be part of this community because it's good for them and it helps them.
Yes. Well, I know a number of those people. And so as we close out here, I do want to ask, like I said, my friend Kara, I said, if you could sit down with Carlos, what would you want to ask him? And she, she's like, oh my gosh. But she said, I just love the way he is with his kids. Like, how do you facilitate that type of relationship? Now, I know there's no formula.
Oh, sure.
That's not what we're looking for. But I mean, I guess just the openness it seems like you have with
Uh-huh.
them. I know a lot of that's Heather and the way that people are just welcomed in and out of your house. Like,
Yeah.
bless your all soul. You're so giving. Do you have any tips for those of us that are just like, we want, as our kids get
Yeah.
older, to have that relationship?
Yeah. I definitely would say this. First of all, if there's anyone that's listening that has kids that have kids, and you may
Mm,
be thinking, it's too late. Like my kids already have their own kids. How in the world am I going to
yeah.
get that relationship back? I want to let you know that it's not too late. So
Amen.
understand and know that it just begins with building that relationship, and honestly, and seeing them, right? Seeing them. Now, obviously, if you've got younger kids, you are set up. And what we have done, and we've been very purposeful in this, we have invited our kids into our mess in our marriage. We've invited our kids
Mm,
into seeing us having to walk through things. We've invited them into that to where they're very comfortable letting us into their mess because we've let
mm,
them into ours. Now, obviously, always like age appropriate, right? Like we're not letting our, the kids know all the details that aren't for them, but we've just invited them into our
mm.
story as a married couple, into my story as a flawed, jacked up human.
Yeah,
And so just inviting them in, I think, is one thing to do if from a younger age than you think. Our kids are a lot
I
stronger,
agree with that.
and they're just more resilient than we think that they are. And then I would also, some of the tactical stuff that I did is I took every one of my kids on a date every single week. Like I just went on a daddy-daughter date and a daddy-son date. And from the time they were little all the way until now, like we still schedule them. They're a little harder to schedule, but they're on the calendar. And yeah, and we do that, and I was very specific with questions I would ask them on those, on those dates. But I feel like that part is like the loving your kid well, dividing them into your story. That's the easy part, to be honest with you. The more difficult part, when they get a little older, and they don't want to hang out with you anymore.
Mhm.
Because all my kids went through that, is what we've learned. A little trick, couple little tricks. Number one, we were like, how do we? Because a lot of parents ask me, how did you guys end up being the house? Because we're the house where
Yes.
I could walk upstairs right now. I guarantee you there may be a 19-year-old dude that I don't know in my fridge. Like it just like, who knows? They just show up. But this is how we became that house, is when our kids got to the age where we weren't cool anymore and they didn't want anything to do with us. We started loving their friends, and we
Mhm.
started pouring into their friends. And guess what? Their friends started wanting to hang out with us. Their friends started wanting to be here. When Heather started cooking, like the front doors open, like just incredible meals, pizza all the time. Kids knew. And a lot of these kids, some of them don't have great home lives. They would much rather spend time around a family
Mm.
that is pouring into them and feeding them and having fun with them. And so like we just started doing that. And I started like counseling some of their friends, not like counseling, but like,
Yeah,
like
just ask.
looking them, asking like, hey, like what's going on? Like, what's going on with that? Do you mind if I share like some advice? And next thing you know, their friends are wanting to come over here, and they're like, well, I guess that's where we're going to go. And it's just become like this really cool, safe space. Just to be that safe place for their friends was huge. So I think that's a couple of the ways that we ended up that way.
Oh, that's good advice for me. As mine are 12, 10, and 7. And so
Yep.
we're like kind of on the cusp of that.
Uh-huh.
And it's hard for me because I'm the one that's like, oh my gosh, there's so many people in my house. I'm going to go
Right.
crazy. But I keep trying to fight it,
Yep. Yep. And
but it
you
can
could
be
do it your
hard.
way. You do it your
Yes.
way, So
Yes, but I mean, I do agree, and that's what
uh,
my husband would say too. Like, yeah, our house became the house people were at because we always had food.
yep.
Mom always had the door open, and I mean, we just kind of treated everybody like they're part
Yeah.
of the family. So
Yeah.
that's
It's
good
that easy.
advice. Well, Carlos, thank you so much for everything that you do.
Oh,
How to be a human or how to be human
yeah.
can be found anywhere, and yeah. I'm just
Thank you,
grateful
Amber.
to be kind of an observer and a giver at times as well.
Well, thanks for being part of the Insta Familia, Amber.
You're welcome. Have a good one.
You too.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. Remember to visit graceenoughpodcast.com/books for your free list of 8 books that were influential in ways that surprised me.
Thank you for listening to the Grace Enough podcast. Tune in next time.